Pirates of the Caribbean, one of Disney's most successful live-action franchises, which spanned 5 movies over the course of 14 years, to mild critical success. The series follows the exploits of Jack Sparrow, who starts as an underdog pirate trying to win his ship back, to fighting ghosts over Poseidon's trident, and watch 2 former friends make out as he sails into the sunset. Yeah, these movies got progressively more ridiculous as time went on, but that did not stop these movies from making big bucks. One of the products of Pirates' success is, of course, the toys and merchandise associated. LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean sets were released mainly around the time of the franchise's 4th installment on Stranger Tides, and with the LEGO sets came the eventual LEGO game, and also the subject of this next project. Yes, I learned my lesson from the last time, okay? I'm covering a game people have actually asked for. And last time I did that, it was like 2019.
Oh, thank God. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, this is one of the ones I wanted, actually.
Okay, so I did spin a wheel, and I probably would have gone with any other game, so maybe I didn't learn my lesson. But what's important is that the wheel chose this one. And this game is one I've been wanting to rank for a long time. I feel like this game came out at a ripe time in LEGO Games history. TT Games already had a few LEGO games under their belt at this point, so the level design is more refined. But it was before voice acting was made commonplace, which was a turnoff for a lot of people when it came to LEGO games. Also, the character roster is not obnoxiously ginormous with only 79 characters, which is great for me. But are there any special rules for the ranking? Well, there's not much rule-wise, except custom characters will not be included as usual. Also, I'm ranking them first and foremost based on how useful they are, if you're a completionist, like I am. But this game contains a lot of characters with identical ability sets, unlike LEGO Avengers, where most characters are shockingly unique. In the case of identical ability sets, I'll rank based on their role in the movie they're from, how much I like them, or their design. It's really just balls to the wall at that point. Also, since this series will be shorter, I'm going to experiment with, a little bit of an intro for each individual part, discussing a different aspect of the game or movies. So, the rules are set, the blades are sharpened, and the rum is gone.
Why is rum gone?
So let's get into this new ranking of every character in LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean, the video game. At the dirt bottom of the list, we have the Cook. Cook of what, you asked? Oh, just the Queen Anne's Revenge. Just the most intimidating ship on the 7 seas, even though we never heard a thing about it until the 4th movie. And yes, I know Blackbeard and his ship were real things that happened, but obviously they botched his cause of death in this movie. Hell, I don't even think the death they made up for him on Stranger Tides is as cool as the actual battle where Blackbeard died. But enough about the captain. Let's talk about the guy that cooks his meals. Cook was actually a character you played briefly in the Queen Anne's Revenge level. That level was all about chain reactions. You get an egg so the cook can cook it so that you can give it to another guy, but not before waking up a strong man with music so he can rip open the cage to give the guy in the cage the egg so that he can fix something. If that sounded like chore upon chore to you, it was. That's what the whole level was. Half of it, anyway. And aside from him frying an egg, he does absolutely nothing. The egg was a one-time thing, okay? It's not an actual ability ever needed elsewhere. And to boot, you can just skip right over all this chore doing in free play because you can just switch in a character with the Forge ability immediately. Oh, and if you don't know what I mean by Forge, just continue watching the series, part 3 to be exact. It took me too long to realize who this guy was. At first I thought he was the Grail Knight from LEGO Indiana Jones and that there was some kind of mistake. No, this is the old dude that the Spanish found at the beginning of On Stranger Tides. The guy with the book about the Fountain of Youth. It's curious they decided to put this guy in the game and opted out of some more important characters, but that's a topic for another time. It's also kind of strange how unique this guy is. Well, first off, this guy has no abilities, just like the cook. But he has a fish as a weapon, which I guess is a step up from a frying pan. For my entertainment purposes, of course. I know realistically the cook will literally cook that fish. But aside from weapon choice, another thing that tickles my fancy when it comes to the Ancient Sailor is he does like this cartwheel thing in the air for a double jump. Again, this does jack nothing. But why is he doing air tricks as a 200-something-year-old? Oh, my boy Cotton, it's such a shame that you're so far down on the list, but if there's anything this game got right, it's that this guy is dead weight. I get that he was there in the movie for the comedy of it all, the fact that Cotton was among the best Jack Sparrow could find on Tortuga, but come on, can we really trust him as a deckhand? We never see him after At World's End, so it's anyone's guess where he ended up. But Cotton himself is not necessarily the draw to his character, it's the parrot that speaks for him, since his tongue is gone. Yeah, remember that? I don't believe the parrot has a name.
Mr. Cotton's parrot. Same question.
But it's the source of comedic relief in the first 3 movies. Unfortunately, though, as I've hinted, Cotton has no abilities. He has a parrot, though, and I sometimes see him doing a jig in the hub world, but that's really it for Cotton in this game. He's the focus of one of the events in the Tortuga level, where you have to chase around the parrot until it returns to Cotton so he can be recruited, but I don't believe we ever play this guy again, and for good reason. He sucks. Scrum is an interesting character to me because this guy became a mainstay after the original trilogy of movies, which I believe is the only character to do this. I mean, all the characters that were returning in On Stranger Tides and Dead Men Tell No Tales were already in the original trilogy. You got Gibbs, Barbossa, even Marty, and of course Jack Sparrow, but Scrum was introduced in On Stranger Tides as one of Blackbeard's deckhands and returned for Dead Men Tell No Tales as one of Jack's cronies. In this game, though, he was only playable in one level, and his ability is next to worthless. Like Cook, he was a tool used in the Queen Anne's Revenge level to gain access to a better character. To get the guy who wants the egg in the cage, first you must wake up another character that can bust him out with music, and that's where Scrum comes in. Scrum wields a guitar that, when holding down the action button, generates a tune. This satisfies the guy that is able to bust open the egg enjoyer's cage, but there's another thing to note with Scrum's guitar, in that it stops all enemies in their tracks and has them do a jig. This is a neat concept, but nothing is really achieved from doing this. As soon as you stop, the enemies resume their attack, so all you really do is waste time, as you can still would need to defeat them. In any case, this guitar is at least something, which is more than what can be said for the other 3 characters we've covered thus far. Rejoice, we have our first character that actually has an ability that serves a purpose. To be fair, the ability this guy has is literally the worst possible version of this ability, and I would never use this guy for said ability, but he still has it nonetheless. This is the Hungry Cannibal, which is a character name I doubt they'd ever use now. If this game came out today, I guess they would name this guy the Pelagostos Tribesman or something, not Hungry Cannibal. That's a pretty malicious name for a Lego game, but anywho, the Hungry Cannibal wields a spear, which leads to his only ability, the ranged ability. Throughout the game, there are targets, which are things we've seen in several Lego games on this channel, but those with the ranged ability can target these bullseyes to make things happen. Alternatively, you can aim at enemies and shoot them from afar. Very rarely will you be able to do that, since enemies primarily just run up to you to fight, aside from a few exceptions. But the bullseyes are the primary use for ranged weapons. The only problem with the Hungry Cannibal is that he has a spear, which is way slower and clunkier than most other means of ranged weaponry. It takes forever to wind up that spear and launch it, almost to the point where there's just no point. But on a technical level, the Hungry Cannibal does have an ability that could be used in levels to find collectibles and such, but literally any other character with the ranged ability is preferred. Captain Bellamy did not even get the consideration of being in the main story, at all, not even in the cutscene. This is the captain of the ship that Elizabeth Swann snuck onto in Dead Man's Chest. The ship's crew argues over the dress that was found and that the ship might be haunted, you know, that one. Honestly, what a blunder on Elizabeth's part for leaving the dress there. I get that maybe she didn't have time to dispose of the dress, but why couldn't she just crumple it up and toss it off the back of the ship when no one was looking? I digress. My point is that Captain Bellamy is the captain of that ship with the stupid crew, not to be confused with the guy from One Piece or, the actual Captain Bellamy that existed in real life. Out of the 3 Bellamys, I don't really know anything about any of them. I don't watch One Piece, and I didn't know there was an actual Bellamy. And I just found out about both of them when researching. But I do know that the Pirates of the Caribbean Bellamy died gruesomely to the Kraken, which is a major L on his part. It's a shock that he even made it onto the roster, considering he got zero representation in the game itself. His one ability, though, is the sword ability, which will come to be a common one since this is a Pirates-related game. Sword characters can not only engage in sword fighting combat, which is weirdly specific, but they can also pull sword levers, which are extremely common in this game, probably the most common ability. So if a character doesn't have a sword, it might just set them back. Lieutenant Groves is the de facto beta of the British Royal Navy in these movies. He went from being Norrington's right-hand man to the right-hand man of Privateer Barbossa, which that was a strange phase on Barbossa's part. But Groves went ahead and died like a chump in the fourth Pirates of the Caribbean movie by claiming the Fountain of Youth as British land and then getting shot immediately by the Spaniard. Poor guy, he's just trying to climb the ladder for years just to die a British simp. Not really good look by any means. In this game, though, he looks like some generic British soldier that may or may not carry some status, and honestly, that is exactly what Lieutenant Groves was. And who knows, he was shot in the stomach. Who says he didn't survive? Maybe he can come back and become the general he probably wanted to be. But with the current state of the franchise, we shouldn't get our hopes up. Similar to Captain Bellamy, Lieutenant Groves only has the sword ability, but the sword ability is a good ability to have, even though it's very common. So if you want to get ranked higher, you'd have to bring something else to the table, aside from one measly sword. Remember Norrington? I feel like I've watched the original 3 Pirates of the Caribbean movies several times, yet I always forget that this guy exists, even though he plays a shockingly large role in those movies. In the first one, he's the guy simping over Elizabeth, and then gets to watch her make out with Will Turner, poor guy. In the second movie, the version this variant is from, which I'll get to, but he's found in Tortuga being a class act, and then he becomes the reason why Davy Jones becomes the short guy's slave, essentially. At least Norrington comes to his senses in At World's End, which is even one of the levels in the campaigns for this game, aptly named Norrington's Choice. But this is the Disgraced variant, who is playable in the Isla Cruces level. Wait, how do you pronounce that, first of all? Cruces. Okay, I was right. Okay. One of my personal favorite levels and moments in the entire franchise as a whole. You play as Disgraced Norrington and Will Turner in a fight against Jack Sparrow. Having to fight against the true main character of the franchise is such a cool concept for a level, and it made sense given the scenario it was representing from the film. Anyway, Disgraced Norrington just has the sword ability to his name, and honestly, I'm surprised he even has that, considering he's like, disgraced and all. Okay, I apologize in advance for probably completely butchering this guy's name. It's pronounced Sri Samhaji Angria. He was one of the members of the Brethren Court who had their own entire level in this game, which is kind of crazy. I mean, At World's End is almost 3 hours in length, which was unheard of at that time for Hollywood movies. This was before Avatar and obviously Avengers Endgame, both of which are known for their long runtime. But LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean designated only 5 levels per movie. So for a movie that is so long in runtime, those 5 level slots are kind of precious, to say the least. So I'm surprised the Brethren Court scenes got representation. I get why the Brethren Court was so important, because they needed all the pirates on the 7 seas to work together to be able to defeat the forces of the British Navy and Davy Jones, but that point wasn't exactly driven home in a game with no voice acting. Anyway, as I've said, Angria here is one of the pirate lords on the Brethren Court. In the Brethren Court level, you go around and help each pirate lord with a small task to get them to use their sword to open a door. Angria's special task is, wait for it, a dance-off. Well, one of those, tile puzzles that we've seen in several LEGO games at this point. Just jump on the ones they tell you to. Also, Angria's only ability is sword, and spoilers, the same is going to be for all but one of the Brethren Court, so enjoy that coming up. You know, I've always thought that the inclusion of On Stranger Tides in this game would be similar to what it would be like to have Kingdom of the Crystal Skull included in LEGO Indiana Jones, The Original Adventures. You know, there's a solid trilogy of movies that most people can admit that, you know, the films are pretty good. And then there's a fourth one that kind of sours the stew, or however that saying goes. Now don't get me wrong, I strongly prefer what TT Games did with LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean to what they did with LEGO Indiana Jones. Like, imagine if they made a LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean, The Original Exploits of Captain Jack Sparrow, which only covers the original 3 films, and then follow it up with LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean 2, with The Exploits of Captain Jack Sparrow Continues, where half the game covers the inferior 4th movie, while cramming the first 3 movies again in the second half. And no, I'm not that great at naming things, okay? The point is, I feel like 2 very similar franchises in the sense of how the movies got released got 2 totally different treatments by TT Games when it came to the adaptation of the material. And to extend the comparison, not that it matters, but both Indiana Jones and Pirates of the Caribbean later get a 5th installment that was after the release of their LEGO games. So there's that. I mean, okay, the 5th Pirates of the Caribbean movie sucks, and on principle I can't watch the 5th Indiana Jones movie. So I guess the lesson to be learned is LEGO Indiana Jones 2 should be deleted from existence, and TT Games should release retroactive DLC to the original adventures containing 6 levels of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. A man can dream. Oh, you think I'm going to let you have a break from the Brethren Court? How about a whole slew of the ones that don't hold any bearing to the plot? Because that's what's happening. Eduardo Villanova is the next on the chopping block with a shorter and easier to pronounce name than the last dude we just covered. In the Brethren Court level, you help this guy out by saving his life. You find the handle that is needed to pull up Eduardo here from this dangling boat that he somehow found himself on. And with that kind of behavior on the Brethren Court land, it makes you wonder how this guy even got enough reputation to become a pirate lord of the Adriatic Sea, which was his designated sea, by the way. Yeah, these guys get their own seas to preside over. Angria's was the Indian Ocean, which is infinitely larger than Villanova's Adriatic. I wonder, it begs the question, how did they decide the boundaries for which these pirate lords rule over? Because that is totally unfair on Villanova's part. Maybe Angria has a bigger fleet to be able to maintain his region, or Villanova is just as good with a smaller crew. I'm not paid enough to find out, but I could make the rules if you guys want. But as for this game, Eduardo Villanova also just has the sword ability, similar to Angria, of course. Next up in the Brethren Court Marathon is Aman the Corsair, Pirate Lord of the Black Sea. The Black Sea is about 3 times the size of the Adriatic, but still pathetic in size compared to the Indian Ocean. You think when the Brethren Court were mapping out territory, they told Angria they can just have the Indian Ocean as like an afterthought and just didn't realize how huge of a territory that actually is? Aman's task that you must complete for him is exceptionally basic compared to the others, and it's probably because it's the one right next to the spawn point for the level. You just have to use the sword levers to release bricks that will construct a statue of Aman the Corsair. Way to feed an ego, but it gets the objective done. As always, the only ability of this Brethren Court member is just his trusty sword, but aside from that, there's really not much to say at all. Not that I expected these Brethren Court people to be fully fleshed out in this movie, but the whole concept of the Brethren Court seems a bit haphazardly put together. I get that all the pirates coming together was the only thing that could stop a deadly duo of Davy Jones and the entire British Navy, but instilling order among this group of people who swear to a life without order just seems a bit silly to me. This guy here, Gentleman Jocard, is the pirate lord of the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean is 13 million square miles larger than the Indian Ocean, so this Gentleman Jocard guy is definitely holding some status. Maybe that's why he's making everyone call him Gentleman? Or he could actually be a gentleman, who's to say? I mean, well, he's a pirate, so Who knows? Really, I don't. And again, I'm not going to read those children's novels, but I did mosey on over to the wiki to find out that not only was Gentleman Jocard a crewmate on the Black Pearl, Jack Sparrow's ship, but he was also imprisoned in Davy Jones' locker, both of which happened before the events of the Brethren Court meeting, which... Huh? Barbossa and company barely managed to get to Davy Jones' locker with that magic map. How could Gentleman Jocard do it without it? Even the wiki doesn't know. For Gentleman Jocard's task in the Brethren Court level, you must point a cannon at a chest and blow it up. Alternatively, in free play, you can bypass the cannon with someone with the explosive ability. And if you're a regular watcher of the channel, you'll know what I mean by that. But if you're new, you're going to have to wait till part 6. Sorry.
Hey, this is Editor Me from the editor room, or my room, whatever. I forgot to say his only ability is sword. Not that I think you guys are idiots. You guys probably can judge that from what I've been saying the past few seconds, but I got to cover all my bases. So, Gentleman Jocard's only ability is sword. Yep.
Okay, listen, guys, we're almost done with the Brethren Court for now. I believe there's one more after this. Yeah, and then we'll get a break. So, just take a breath. Let's get through this, okay? Captain Chevalle, this guy's outfit is definitely the best out of the Brethren Court bunch, and his only ability, which is, of course, the sword, uses his cane as the sword instead of an actual sword, and I love that. And you'll come to see that soon enough with more characters that substitute swords with similar shaped objects for the sword ability. Captain Chevalle is the Pirate Lord of the Mediterranean, which causes even more confusion with Villanova's jurisdiction. For those who don't know, the Adriatic Sea is a part of the Mediterranean Sea. So does Villanova answer to Chevalle? That would be funny if true. And now it's my new headcanon. Yep, Villanova is Chevalle's employee now. You can't convince me otherwise. You have to complete one of those rotate the box to get the ball out type of puzzle for Chevalle, which we saw 3 levels prior in the Singapore level on a larger scale. And for someone who binged the entirety of the 4 campaigns in this game to prepare for this series, it just seems a little bit repetitive. Sao Feng played a pretty big role in At World's End. He was also one of the pirate lords before his untimely end to the Flying Dutchman in the movie of his origin, At World's End, with Elizabeth Swann promptly replacing him. I mean, the whole reason the Caribbean crew went to Singapore, which was a level in this game, was to steal Sao Feng's magic map so that they can go to Davy Jones' locker. You know, the one that you see in the segment transitions for each character in these videos? Yeah, that one. That's the map. Sao Feng didn't even survive 1 movie before kicking the bucket, but to be fair, the death count in At World's End was pretty substantial since it was the end of a trilogy. A similar situation happened with the final Harry Potter installment. They probably are never coming back anyway, so why not kill them, you know? But I digress. Sao Feng, despite having a pretty big role in At World's End, doesn't really hold up in this game in terms of abilities. Just like all other pirate lords before now, Sao Feng only possesses the sword ability. Good for him that he has a sword, considering this is a pirate game, but come on, my guy. Do something else. Who knew that not being disgraced would bump you up into the next part of the series? Yeah, I went over Disgraced Norrington a while back, and while nothing has changed here ability-wise, I have to bump him up because his status is reinstated. Norrington's situation is unique in this game. Of course, Norrington was in the first 3 Pirates of the Caribbean movies and plays a pretty substantial role. However, in this game, you play the Disgraced Norrington first in the Dead Man's Chest campaign. Then you later unlock this Norrington, the standard one, in the campaign after, in the aptly named Norrington's Choice level. This poses a sticky situation for the movie representation counter I'm doing at the end of every video. Norrington originated in the first Pirates movie, but you unlock him in the 3rd movie's campaign in this game. So do I give the point to Curse of the Black Pearl or At World's End? I'm going to make a judgment call, and I'm going to give the point to Curse of the Black Pearl.
Wow.
But to compensate for this, 2 other characters that you play in the Norrington's Choice level will both count for At World's End. even though those two guys also originated in the first movie. So I guess that's how it goes. I'm not going to say their names, obviously, until we officially cover them. But if you're one of those people that waits for the supercut and is watching this now, you'll have no idea what I'm talking about. But in any case, James Norrington, of course, only has the sword ability, and his lack of abilities is why I've been rambling about some unnecessary thing. And let's just move on. Governor Weatherby Swann is one of those important characters that almost stays out of the action entirely. In case you haven't seen the films or you don't recognize the last name, Governor Swann is the father of Elizabeth Swann, the female lead. He is the governor of Port Royal and, like James Norrington and Sao Feng before him, dies in the third movie. At least Elizabeth got to see him one last time as he passed on while they were in that limbo area, which must have been a tough situation. I couldn't really imagine myself. Anyway, Governor Weatherby Swann is just like all the characters in this part so far, in that he has the sword ability, and that's it. However, he stands out since he wields a candle in the place of a sword. The candle still operates the same as a sword, but it's more quirky and fun. Listen. I have to find ways to differentiate these characters so that I can rank them. Okay? And what am I supposed to do when they function exactly the same? Okay? The fact that he has a candle instead of a lame old sword is good enough of a reason for me. This is a funny addition to the roster for me, mostly because I'm surprised this guy can actually walk on his 2 feet for more than 10 seconds. King George appeared in On Stranger Tides, and Jack Sparrow met him briefly before doing one of those signature escape scenes. The king was played by the legendary Richard Griffiths, who was Uncle Vernon in the Harry Potter movies. I don't know how accurate his betrayal was to the actual King George during his reign, but being a disgusting slob seems like something that is plausible for men born with deifying privilege. I'm shocked that King George has any abilities at all in this game, but he indeed does. It's the exact same situation as Governor Swann, but it's something nonetheless. King George also wields a candle that functions as a sword, and it's also his only ability, not surprisingly. I only really ranked King George over Governor Swann, despite the governor being much more important to the plot of Pirates of the Caribbean, because the king literally outranks a governor. The king outranks everybody. That's the point. Now here's one of the main villain characters. He was the guy who mutinied Captain Sparrow to gain control of the Black Pearl, but his relations with the main protagonists got better as the franchise went on. I mean, spoilers, he sacrifices himself for his daughter in the last one, so there's that.
Who am I to you?
Treasure.
But in this game, I kind of feel like Barbossa got shafted. I mean, he's a huge character in the movies, and his Lego counterpart in this game is just lacking. He only has the sword ability, which doesn't seem unusual at first glance. However, I'm going to try to explain something without spoiling the list, but there's a certain ability in this game that the crew of the Black Pearl have because of the Aztec curse that was cast on them prior to the first film. Since the curse was lifted, technically, these characters shouldn't have that ability anymore. But since you don't see them at any point after the first film, the developers just had those crew members retain that ability, even though the curse was lifted. However, Barbossa, also being subjected to the curse that was since lifted, had that specific ability revoked since he was a playable character in a level after the events of the first film, that level being the Singapore level in At World's End. If Barbossa wasn't a playable character at all in the story, Barbossa probably would have had that ability, but he was in a level after the first film, so he doesn't have that ability. It'll make more sense eventually. Guess what? Barbossa was the last character to have only the sword ability and nothing else. I felt bad for how Barbossa got cheated in this game, so he was deemed the best sword-only character guy, but now we're heading into the ranged-only ability people. Tai Huang, one of Sao Feng's right-hand men, has a gun.
And that's really all that can be said about him in this game. He's a gun guy. You see a target, Tai Huang can take care of it. I know I've said the sword ability is so important in this game and that it's needed in levels way more than ranged weaponry is. So why are the ranged only characters ranked higher than the sword only characters? Well, as you'll come to see, as we get higher in the list, swords will become increasingly common to the point that you'd never use one of those sword only characters that I've gone over unless you personally like one of them for some reason. Otherwise, if you need the sword ability, you'll just use a character that has a sword plus other abilities. Ranged weapons, though, they're not nearly as common, so there's a good chance you'll switch to someone like Tai Huang to shoot it down a target or two. Now, I've touched on the smaller character count of LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean compared to other recent LEGO games that I've covered with a measly 80 characters. TT Games really did stretch to fill up the roster. I mean, Ancient Sailor, Captain Bellamy, who are these people? But despite their best efforts to stretch out the roster, there are some shocking absences of a few characters. Now, I didn't take note of every possible character that was in the movies that didn't get a spot in this game, but here are the prime examples that I could think of off the top of my head. First of all, and probably the biggest sin, was the fact that Jack Sparrow's father is not in this game.
I call on Captain Teague, keeper of the code.
Not only was he, the big pirate boss man in At World's End, but he also makes a brief appearance in On Stranger Tides, in London of all places. So where is he in this game? And don't say it's because he didn't show up in the actual campaign. We got Captain Bellamy, may I remind you. Another missed opportunity is the inclusion of the Davy Jones locker jacks. And what I mean by that is in the Davy Jones locker level, you play as 4 jacks. One is the regular one, but the other 3 have a unique ability. Instead of their compass, one of them has a shovel, one of them has a pistol, and one of them has a bomb, which are 3 different abilities in this game. But those additional jacks aren't in the actual roster, which I feel like they should be, because you played them in a level. What are we doing here, guys? Jack Sparrow's father and some additional Jack Sparrows would not have hurt this roster at all. And to add to that list, I feel like adding a cursed Barbossa in his skeleton form would have been a good way to give Barbossa that mystery ability that I hinted on that I still can't talk about. He would have that, skeleton version of him as the design. Maybe TT Games wanted an even square of character icons and they opted to leave those guys out. But I would rather them add the ones that I've mentioned into the game and take out a few of the customizable characters. Why are there so many? No one uses them anyway. So Mr. Mercer is basically just a bad dude. No real depth to this guy. Not that I was really itching to know Mr. Ian Mercer's sob story background. He's the right-hand man of the short guy, mostly carrying out the dirty work by killing whoever the short man wants. Every time I think of Mr. Mercer, which isn't a lot, like not an exorbitant amount, but on the off chance that I do think of this guy, on the off chance he does cross my mind, I imagine him shooting someone. That was what it came down to fulfill Beckett's needs. Oh, I'm sorry, short guy. He needs to shoot someone or something somewhere, and somehow there will be a gunshot heard, and it will be by Mr. Mercer, and the victim will be the one with the bullet hole in them, and they will probably be dead. Can you tell I'm trying to stretch out this segment for as long as I can? Oh, and speaking of shooting, I probably should have mentioned this. Mr. Mercer has the ranged ability because of the gun that he uses to shoot people, and I'd expect nothing less from this bad, bad man. Now, you remember when I talked about Norrington and that he had his own level called Norrington's Choice? Well, since LEGO games must always be co-op and Norrington can't be alone in a level, the developers teamed him up with the comedic relief Redcoat doofuses, Murtogg being one of them. Murtogg is one of a duo, and the second half is coming up next, so I'll save the talk of them being a duo to when I can legally say the next guy's name. Murtogg is like the dumber one of the two, and honestly, I just like the other guy better, so that's why Murtogg is lower.
However, the one ability Murtogg has is of course the theme of the first half of this part, ranged and only ranged. Murtogg carries a musket, which has a shockingly higher firing rate compared to a historically accurate musket, but hey, this is a Lego game, and the franchise is frickin' Pirates of the Caribbean. Historical accuracy was thrown out the window almost immediately. As I've said in the last segment, Mullroy is the second half of the Redcoat duo, who is also a playable character in the Norrington's choice level. Mullroy and Murtogg are no different in the abilities with the single musket, and almost no difference in appearance either. Hell, even their names are stupidly similar. They're just the red-coated comedic relief. Enough said. What's funny though, aside from their antics, which wasn't really even that funny, is that even though they swore allegiance to the king, they actually switched sides at the end of At World's End by becoming crewmates of the Black Pearl. They had a pretty big role in Dead Men Tell No Tales as well. Well, not really, but it's more than you would expect. Though they were pretty annoying in the fifth movie especially, despite the fact that they were done a lot better in earlier movies. Their shtick is that they are so easily pulled into arguing with each other that protagonists get an opportunity to escape, steal, or what have you. But in the last movie, there was a whole scene dedicated to Mullroy fooling Murtogg into telling him where his treasure is. That movie was over 2 hours long. They couldn't trim that scene out. Now, I just covered the Redcoat doofus duo with Murtogg and Mullroy. Now, here is one half of their pirate counterparts. Yeah, I know that I said that Murtogg and Mullroy became pirates, but they kind of just replaced Pintel and his bestie, who I will name just because it's next to impossible to not with this guy, Ragetti. Pintel and Ragetti were just Murtogg and Mullroy in pirate form, albeit way better. One of the funniest scenes of Dead Man's Chest, maybe the entire franchise, is Ragetti explaining to Pintel the motives of Sparrow, Turner, and Norrington in their fight for the chest. Really, Pintel and Ragetti are the perfect duo to play seemingly a minor role, but just important enough to be interacting with the main characters. Murtogg and Mullroy can never achieve that feat. But Pintel here shares the same fate as Barbossa in this game, where he did have the Aztec curse, but was revoked of that special ability I won't name yet, because he shows up afterwards. You actually get to play as Pintel in the level titled A Touch of Destiny. However, Pintel does retain his ranged ability with his pistol. Now, we went over the hungry cannibal. Here is the angry cannibal. Put them together, you get the hangry cannibal. I'm just joshing. I'm a little peeved that they needed to include two cannibals that barely differ at all aside from their weapon of choice, and not include some of the characters I've mentioned, like Teague or the Davy Jones locker jacks. But both cannibals made the cut, and we just have to deal with it. Angry Cannibal only has the ranged ability, similar to the Hungry Cannibal, but he doesn't have the stupid lame spear. He has a blow dart. I don't think there's any kind of advantage of a blow dart over a pistol in this game, but the blow dart just feels like it's packing more of a punch. Let me reiterate. There is most likely no plus to having a blow dart in this game over a pistol, but I feel like there is, so just let me have this, okay? Also, the Angry Cannibal is the only character to even have a blow dart, and it was probably to differentiate him from the Hungry Cannibal and his spear, but it's still cool. If you've never played this game and you're along just for the ride, this guy probably has no significance to you. But this guy is Mr. Brown and gets the honor of being one of two characters you play in the very first level of this game, in the very first area. That's right, you play Mr. Brown before you play Jack Sparrow. In fact, you're actually fighting Jack Sparrow before you get to actually play as him. But Mr. Brown was the drunken owner of a smithy, and Will Turner was his apprentice. Mr. Brown was really just in the right place at the right time to be the first character you get to play. This game was adapting the initial sword fight between Jack Sparrow and Will Turner in the smithy in the first film. And the Lego games, you know, they need co-op, so Mr. Brown was the lucky guy to accompany Will Turner. Mr. Brown's only ability is completely understandable, seeing that he is the owner of a smithy and is also a new ability to this series. Mr. Brown wields a hammer and has the Forge ability. Basically, if you see machinery pulsing red, those with Forge can fix it to make stuff happen. However, we only ever see Mr. Brown drunk off his rocker, so I'm not sure if we can trust him with a hammer. At least it's not a sword, though. Now, I spent a little bit of time on the Queen Anne's Revenge level a while ago when talking about the Cook and Scrum, since they were key players in the going-ons of the level. Well, Solomon here was also a component as the Forger. Solomon was the guy you needed the cooked egg for, and was also behind bars. Now, I don't know exactly why Solomon was behind bars and no one else was, but we should be raising eyebrows for that. Why was he the only guy? While everyone else was chilling below deck on their hammocks, this guy was trapped behind bars. Is he a criminal? Should we be releasing him? Are we sure we want to do that? Is there literally anyone besides the one singular guy behind bars that could forge something? Apparently not. And the wiki said that this guy is a cold-blooded killer in his introductory paragraph, so his case is not really being helped. His only ability is Forge, though, and I ranked him over Mr. Brown because, honestly, between a killer and a drunk, I would trust the forging of the murderer any day. Come on. Like, that guy's under the influence. He can't forge. I don't know. Based on what we see of Mr. Brown in the first film, you already know Will Turner was behind any sword that was coming out of that smithy. So Mr. Brown is lucky to have the forge ability at all. Of course, I leave the position of the best Forge-only character to Mr. Gibbs, probably the most loyal character to Jack Sparrow in the entire series. Seriously, it's shocking how much faith Gibbs has in Sparrow. I mean, Gibbs almost took the brunt of Sparrow's crimes by impersonating him in London. And as I've mentioned, Gibbs has the Forge ability and nothing else. Gibbs never really displayed any forging in the films, at least not that I remember. But I think the developers wanted the crewmates of Jack Sparrow to have, something special, especially in the Tortuga level. They may have dropped the ball on Cotton, but all the other crewmates you recruit in that level have at least something. Gibbs was, like I said, one of the recruits in the Tortuga level, and this game has a puzzle that recreates how Jack wakes him up with a cauldron of water while he sleeps with pigs. In the end, I just think Gibbs is somewhat of an unsung hero in these films, and he gets points for that. So I think this was the guy that was supposed to replace Will Turner. Well, not really, but he played the role of white dude who isn't used to the pirate life but is taken under the wing of Jack Sparrow, I guess. But instead of being the son of a pirate, Philip here is a missionary. He spreads the word of God and also has an uncomfortable to watch romance with a mermaid. Really weird. However, Philip actually has a semi-useful ability that is exclusive to him and one other character. The ability is called Screech. Well, kind of. The other character that has this ability, and also the reason why this ability is in this game at all, she screeches. Philip sings, but it does the same thing. So I'm hesitant to call it Screech since it's not screeching, it's singing. But I mean, I guess it does start to sound like screeching once you hear it for long enough. Seriously, why is it the same vocalization over and over? It gets old at a light speed pace, but whether it's screeching or just, average singing, it still shatters glass. That's right, glass breaking is in this game, and only 2 characters can do it. Philip is one, but the other character does so much more. So, Philip, please take your leave. We do not need you in this game. Now, you remember Barbossa and Pintel, and how I said they're missing an ability that those with an Aztec curse have because they showed up after the first film in this game? Well, now I can finally reveal that ability. One of the iconic scenes in the franchise is the skeleton crew of the Black Pearl marching underwater. Well, that's it. That's the ability, the underwater walk. Characters without the ability must dive if they want to go underwater, and even then, they can only dive for so long until they run out of breath. That is, unless they have the extra. But underwater walkers immediately sink to the bottom of the water, where a lot of minikits and extra studs are located. Grapple here was a crew member of the Black Pearl and was inflicted with the Aztec curse. However, he never shows up again after the first film, so he gets to keep his underwater walk. It's a shame that being represented more in this game equates to a reduction in the amount of abilities a character can have, but that's what Barbossa and Pintel are dealing with. As for Grapple, though, he's named that because he wields a grapple. Crazy, isn't it? I feel like they really missed an opportunity with an ability for this guy, but that ability won't come up until the final 10. But, okay, I'll just say it, okay? There's a thing that Jack Sparrow does that only Jack Sparrow can do that I think someone with a grapple, like a guy named Grapple, could definitely also do. I'm just saying. And wouldn't you know it, here we have the final... No, what the frick? Here we have the female lead of the first 3 films. She who would eventually become Pirate King, but instead go back to Port Royal and not even say a single word ever again. Anyone else think it was weird how Elizabeth said literally nothing in the 5th movie at the end? She just runs over to the top of the hill and makes out with Orlando Bloom. Like, at least say something, dude. Like, come on. I get it. You're getting a paycheck to make out with someone. Like, but come on, dude. But this was the Elizabeth Swann variant that you played on the Smuggler's Den level. At this point, Elizabeth and Jack Sparrow had been stranded on this island by Barbossa, but it was the same one that Sparrow had escaped before. Elizabeth Swann, in this form, only has one ability. It's a new one for the series, but we've seen it before in past LEGO games. It's High Jump, an ability given to every female character where they just jump higher. And the game tells you that you should use it by displaying flowers on the ground. The Undergarments Elizabeth is the lowest of the Elizabeth variants because this was her at her low point in the first film. Only fitting that it be her low point in this list as well. Bonus levels are a staple of LEGO games. Once you collect every collectible, obtain every gold brick, a gate opens up for one final experience before you truly finish the game. I typically don't get to talk about them in these character rankings because I'm focused on the quality of the character with respect to the game, but not much focused on any other aspect of the game. Bonus levels in LEGO games are rarely exciting, I'd say. It's just a little something extra, but the real meat of the game are the main levels. There are a few exceptions. The main example that comes to mind is the Young Indy level in LEGO Indiana Jones, The Original Adventures. That level is straight up just a 7th level for The Last Crusade, with the same level quality. There are even some puzzles where you use techniques not found in any of the main levels. But the grand majority of bonus levels in LEGO games are just collect a million studs. These are pretty lazy to me, and all you do is run around and punch stuff. Pirates of the Caribbean's bonus level isn't a collectathon, though, and it's not like a real level like Young Indy. It's a recreation of the Disney World theme park ride. Full disclosure, I've never been to any Disney parks. I know. I don't know how accurate this ride is, but if it is accurate, I would not wait 2 hours in line for it. You basically play as Jack Sparrow and Angelica as they ride through, the ride, stopping at 3 points to fight main baddies in the Pirates franchise, Barbossa, Davy Jones, and Blackbeard, all while that Pirates song plays in the background. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, and I probably am, but I think this is the first time we've heard actual English language aside from Anakin's oopsie in the complete saga. Do I like this bonus level more than the million stud levels? Hard to say. You're pushing the same buttons on the controller, but just in a different context. Instead of punching items to collect studs, you punch enemies to get the level over with. No real thought required. It's a real shame because they definitely could have designed a whole level taking place in a point in the movies they wanted to adapt, but couldn't due to level restraints. I mean, after all, you only get 5 levels per movie. I mean, At World's End was 3 hours long. There's got to be something in there besides the Brethren Court level you could have adapted. Here we have Elizabeth Swann when she was disguised as a redcoat, or British soldier, whatever. I feel like this Elizabeth Swann could have been more useful than she actually is, but her only ability is the obligatory high jump that's given to every female character. You'd think that maybe, just maybe, she could get, I don't know, a sword? Since all redcoats carry one.
But nay, she gets no weapon, just her fists, which is pretty unfortunate. It's not like Elizabeth Swann was declared to be sword-free by TT Games or something, because, slight spoilers, there is an Elizabeth Swann variant or two that does have a sword. There's really no excuse for this one to not have one. Undergarments Elizabeth, I can understand. But come on. I know in the grand scheme of things, this means nothing, because this is a children's game, and I'm a grown man. But I need something to talk about, and complaining just comes naturally to me. When At World's End came out, my family went to see it in the theater. I was just a wee lad back then, and when you're a kid, you don't go to the theater to watch a movie and, ingest the complicated plot. You go because your parents want to shut you up by watching something for a few hours. And it works. I distinctly remember watching the movie and going like, ooh, stimulant, fighting, action, suggestive themes I do not yet understand. So naturally, when child me saw Tia Dalma growing at an alarming rate, I was like, what the heck is going on? And when this game came out, when child me was collecting items to make Tia Dalma grow larger, I was still confused as all hell. How was I to know she was a form of Calypso? Besides, watching the movie. Well, now I know. And I still find Tia Dalma's growth seem to be ingrained in my mind. Anyways, Tia Dalma has just a high jump ability on the account of her being a female character, which is totally understandable. In the DS version of this game, though, Tia Dalma also had a magic ability, but this magic ability is not in the console version, which is unfortunate. Y'all already know how I've been craving more abilities in this game. Why does the handheld version have more abilities than the console version? Should I expand past just covering the console games? Because it sounds like the handheld versions have more going on. After that Tia Dalma intermission, we're back to Elizabeth Swann. And yeah, the Redcoat Elizabeth is no different from this one ability-wise, but I docked Redcoat Elizabeth down in ranking because I'm still salty that she didn't have a sword when I believe she should have, because she's wearing a Redcoat outfit. Yes, I am that petty, and wouldn't you know it, Tia Dalma benefited from it, so, you're welcome, Tia Dalma. But this is the standard version of Elizabeth in her red dress. She only has high jump, but this time it makes sense because this was Elizabeth at the start of the franchise when she was a prim and proper daughter of a governor. She isn't really experienced with a sword yet, so it makes sense that she doesn't have one. I wish I had more to say about Elizabeth aside from what I've said already, as she is the female lead of the first 3 Pirates movies, and far and away the best female lead of the entire series, but all I can really say about this Elizabeth Swann is her single ability being high jump. But of course, this isn't the last we'll see of Elizabeth in the series, because she does gain that ability with later variants that her Redcoat variant was undeservedly lacking. Leanne is one of 2 characters who look exactly the same. This is because Leanne and the other character are twins, so I guess that's not a surprise. These twins served Sao Feng and both died at the hands or pistol of Mr. Mercer, someone I covered a little bit ago. Leanne and her twin do differ in abilities in this game though. Since this is the first twin we're seeing, obviously this is the worst one. Leanne here just has the obligatory high jump since she is a female, but the difference in abilities comes with the weapon of choice of each respective twin. Leanne here has a whip. I believe this is the first character we're covering with a whip, and whips have no ability associated with them, like how, pistols have ranged and swords have sword. There wasn't space for a real function for the whip outside of combat, and to be honest, the whip isn't even great at combat. I'd far sooner choose to fight enemies with a sword, a pistol, or even a fish before a whip. Swords are for close range, pistols are for far range, and whip tries to do both and does not succeed in either. It's really not worth the effort of trying to position yourself just right to get the guy with your whip, because it's like a mid-ranged weapon. It's really weird. This is probably the weirdest addition to the roster. I mean, he did play a part in the first movie as the dog with the keys to the cell, as small as a role that was, and then he returned in the second movie to distract the Pelagos's tribesmen from the Black Pearl, and then he returned again to be revealed as Jack Sparrow's dad's dog. So I don't blame the developers for giving the guard dog a spot in this roster. What makes it weird is that he's a dog, with his own animations, since he's not a standard minifigure. Animations for running, jumping, and even turning a crank are all made specifically for this one dog. You actually unlock him in the first level of the game too, and then this weird behavior of an animal as a playable character is never seen again. Guard Dog is actually the first character in the list with 2 abilities, not just one. First, he can dig. Dig is a new ability to the series, but we've seen it plenty of times before on this channel. You see a sparkling mound of dirt, characters with dig can dig it up. Dogs being able to dig is just common sense. Guard Dog can also interact with these short people hatches, an ability also seen in other LEGO games. So yeah, 2 abilities, and both of them are new to the series. Good job, Guard Dog. The only reason why Guard Dog isn't ranked higher is the fact that he's a dog. His movements are a little more slippery, if that makes sense. He doesn't stop on a dime like all the human characters, and it's just to turn, it's just a hassle. But I do respect his addition to the roster. The Guard Dog being Edward Teague's dog, and Edward Teague not being in the game, is pure irony at its finest, and it kind of pisses me off. Oh man, I love this guy. Now, dig as an ability is a weird case in this game. You would expect the act of digging for, say, I don't know, treasure to be common in this game. You know, X marks the spot. And you'd be right, because it actually is. You dig a lot, actually. But there are only 2 characters in the entire game with the dig ability. One of them not even being playable in the story. To make up for this, though, the levels usually have shovels just laying around for the characters to use. In free play, though, if you're in an area that's only accessible through free play, you're going to need someone that already has a shovel or can dig, which narrows down your options to 2. Guard Dog, who we just covered, and my boy Derek. Now, Derek was a Queen Anne's Revenge crewmate, and his only ability is dig. I ranked him above Guard Dog, who has 2 abilities, because I just prefer controlling a human over a dog. That's all it is. As I said, the dog is a little slippery and sloppy to, move around. And the shovel makes for a good weapon too. But even if you are in an area where a shovel can be grabbed in free play, I'd still switch to Derek because I kind of like the guy. He knows his purpose in the roster, and he fulfills it beautifully. So Derek, if you're watching this, the actor that played Derek, just know that your character in LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean is a brilliant addition to this roster. It's a shame that he didn't make the top half, but whatever. Here he is, the short guy. I've been calling him short guy for I believe every instance I mentioned him, but this is his segment, so I have to say it. So I guess here goes. Lord Cutler. I don't like this. Beckett. Jeez, that wasn't fun. I'd rather not do that again. But I'm going to stick to Short Guy, if you don't mind. Short Guy here carried all the evil in the second and third films. Not even Davy Jones can compete. At least you could sympathize with him a little bit as he got fleshed out as a character. Not Short Guy, though. He's just bad. But is he bad in this game? Well, he beats Derek, so I guess that holds some value. And, I'd say Short Guy does hold some value in this game. All the characters after Lovely Derek have more than 2 abilities, which is huge for this game. A character with 2 abilities in a game like LEGO Avengers would be considered trash, since that game spoiled us with abilities. But this was a simpler time in LEGO games history. Most side characters got maybe 1 ability, if they're lucky, tacked onto them based on their affiliations. Oh, he's a pirate. Give him a sword. Good enough. Oh, it's a kid. Give him shortness. Good enough. So to have 2 abilities, it's special. Anyway, Short Guy is short and is the first human in this roster to have shortness as an ability. And he also has a sword. Did he ever use a sword, though? I don't specifically remember, but I don't think so. You think maybe to sword fight you have to be taller than a certain amount, like at a theme park when you're in line for a roller coaster? And, Short Guy wasn't tall enough? Okay, I'm done. I'm done with this guy. Just put him in the trash. Mallet was a crewmate of the Black Pearl during the first film, so you know what that means. It's time for yet another measly, grubby crewmate to prove himself as more worthy than his captain in a game that came out in 2011. Yep, Mallet did not show up in a later movie, so he gets to keep his curse. It's really strange to me that not being freed of a curse actually makes you better off in this game. So yeah, Mallet has the underwater walk, and that's always helpful. You know how many minikits are found underwater? More than any other LEGO game, I can assure you that. But Mallet brings another thing to the table. Can you guess what it is? Can you? You got it. Mallet has a mallet, so he can forge. I just have to ask, is this accurate? Is there any evidence that he uses a mallet? Or did the developers just give him a mallet to fulfill the prophecy that his name foretold? Now, I know there's a good chance I'm going to butcher this guy's name, so I'm just going to take a stab at it and then stick with it, even if it's completely wrong. So I'm just going to say it. Kohler. Like the store Coles, minus the apostrophe and the S, and then add an ER as an emergency room. Cole emergency room. I like it. However, Kohler is yet another forgotten crewmate of the cursed Black Pearl. So you know what that means. The ability they all get as compensation for falling off the face of the franchise, the underwater walk. In addition to that, Kohler receives his own pistol to give him the ranged ability. As you might have realized, there are quite a few random cursed crewmates that made it into this game and were given their own ability aside from the underwater walk to differentiate themselves from the other cursed crewmates. Like how Mallet is the only cursed crewmate to have the forge with his underwater walk, Kohler is the pistol one. It's been a while, but you must remember the slew of Brethren Court members that I covered a while ago. Well, here we are continuing on with one more. Now, as I've covered previously, each Brethren Court member has a designated sea that they preside over. Angria has the Indian Ocean. That's not anything to scoff at. Gentleman Jocard has the Atlantic. Whoa, that's even bigger. But here, Mistress Ching presides over the Pacific Ocean. What? This woman is in charge of 1/3 of our semi-green Earth? How's that for girl power? Move over, Elizabeth Swann, who was given the title of King of the Pirates for 1/3 of a movie at best. What did she do to get the whole Pacific? Very impressive indeed. In the Brethren Court level, you had to complete a task for each member, as I've mentioned. For Mistress Ching, you had to find 3 wigs, all of which were within 15 feet of her. Also, one was precariously sitting on a plank of wood over a cliff, so I don't know who put that there. But it might have been an assassination attempt on Mistress Ching, I'm just saying. But Mistress Ching has her sword, as all Brethren Court members do, but she also gets the added bonus of the high jump on account of her being a woman. The 5th Pirates of the Caribbean movie, Dead Men Tell No Tales, has gotten some passing remarks from me so far through the series, and I'm guessing you have a general idea of what I think of this movie. Long story short, it's big doo-doo and almost embarrassing to the franchise, if not for the return of Will Turner to his family and a stereotypical sail into the sunset. But other than that, Dead Men Tell No Tales has little to offer for the franchise. It was the definition of jumping the ghost shark. Literally, there were ghost sharks. You can't make this up. Coincidentally, that film is the one film of this franchise to not appear in this game, quite obviously because it was released 6 years after the release of this game. But what are the chances of another LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean game in the future? Dead near 0%, but I can't help but wonder what another LEGO Pirates game would look like given today's LEGO game landscape. I'd like to imagine it'd be executed in the same vein as the Skywalker Saga, where there are several areas in an open world that you can explore, but instead of traveling around with a galaxy map, you instead sail to these different locations. Each of these locations are highly explorable and have their own collectibles, events, and I'm describing Assassin's Creed 4, aren't I? Screw it, they should do it anyway. No one would be upset by a new addition to the LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean collection. Zoe Saldana cannot keep her hands off of these extremely popular Hollywood franchises, can she? Avatar, the MCU, and to a lesser degree, Pirates of the Caribbean. Zoe Saldana portrayed Anamaria, the woman Jack Sparrow promised a British interceptor for. To be fair, Anamaria only appeared in the first film and then mysteriously disappeared afterwards. If only TT Games recognized this, because she can be seen in the Maelstrom level wrangling down a rapidly growing Tia Dalma. It's unknown where she went after the first film, but if she didn't leave being a crewmate on the Black Pearl, then it's entirely possible for her to be a victim of the Pelagos' tribesmen, with her bones being used to construct those ball cages. And that is such a morbid fate, if true. Anamaria in this game is the exact same deal as Mistress Ching, with a sword for a weapon and a high jump for a gender. I only ranked Anamaria and upcoming sword/high jump characters over Mistress Ching because they were actually involved with the plot. One of the first mysteries to On Stranger Tides was, who was the imposter Jack? A man named Jack Sparrow was recruiting crewmates for his vessel, but Jack Sparrow swears it's not him. Turns out it was the love interest disguised as him. It's unfortunate that I have to introduce this character in an inferior variant, but Angelica here is the follow-up female lead to Keira Knightley's Elizabeth Swann, which is a tough act to follow. I mean, she was named King of the Pirates after all. Disguised Angelica, looks-wise, is just a Jack Sparrow, with the face swapped out for Angelica's and then given the female moving animations. And for abilities, it's the same as what we've been seeing, those being the sword and high jump abilities. Disguised Angelica was actually a boss fight in this game at the very end of the London Town level, but I mean, other than that, there's really nothing more to say. Following the imposter Jack Sparrow, we have the true identity of the impersonator, Angelica proper. Here, Angelica has a way more appealing design with the hair hat combo piece. I don't buy much Lego these days, but a piece that displays both the hat and the hair popping out of the hat has always been something I liked. Speaking of real life Lego, I owned a decent amount of the Lego Pirates of the Caribbean sets as they were released with the 4th film. Not a ton, but I did have the Queen Anne's Revenge set, which included this version of Angelica. Owning the physical Lego figure as well as seeing them in action on the screen has always had this nice feeling of novelty to it. Like, whoa, this character does not have nearly as many movable joints in real life as they do in this game. But just like disguised Angelica, she possesses the sword and high jump, as always. Wait a minute, we saw this girl before, right? Well, if you were listening, I said back then that that girl had a twin. This is the twin right here, and the fact that they are so far apart in this list exemplifies how much weapon choice matters in this game. Leanne, the twin we had already covered, had a whip, which had no ability associated with it, and because of that, she was cursed with the high jump and high jump only. Park here, well, she was smart. One sword wasn't good enough for her, so she wields 2, and simply because of that choice, she gets the sword and high jump abilities. Park is also the only character in the game that has dual swords, which in and of itself is a reason to rank her above all the other sword fighting high jumpers. But I decided not to do that because the others I have yet to cover are more important. But big kudos to Park for the dual swords. Like really, she really knocked it out of the park with that one. Here it is. After 2 movies of build-up, Elizabeth finally committed to being a true pirate. Maybe she'll get a peg leg, maybe a hook, steal Cotton's parent maybe? Who knows? But actually we do know. She's just going to cosplay as Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi. Sure, this is the garb she was wearing when she was visiting Singapore with Barbossa to get that map. And I guess this was when she changed her Facebook status to pirate. But the main perk for Elizabeth becoming a pirate for this game, specifically, is the inclusion of a sword. That's right, move over Redcoat Elizabeth, we didn't like you anyway. Pirate Elizabeth Swann and all the other Elizabeths from here on out have a sword in addition to the high jump. With one simple change that probably took TT Games less than 5 minutes to make, Elizabeth Swann was made so much better. Bumped her sword variants over 10 spots above the non-sword Elizabeths, which is a huge gap in a game with only 80 characters. Just goes to show how important swords are in a pirate's game. Redcoat Elizabeth. Elizabeth Swann loves her variants, more so than any other character in this game. She has 7 variants, so simple math says that 7 out of 80 characters is 8.75%, which is close to 10%, so we'll round up. So Elizabeth Swann takes up about 1/10 of the game's roster, which almost warrants her to be her own category in this game. This is the Trader variant. In Dead Man's Chest, Elizabeth's disguised as a male crewmate on Captain Bellamy's ship. She was also wearing this throughout the Isla Cruza scenes of the movie. Now, initially I was surprised to rank the trader version over the pirate version, but the pirate is objectively the cooler profession, in this franchise at least, but looking at their design, it makes sense that trader gets placed above the pirate Elizabeth. As I said in the last segment, the pirate Elizabeth has not a lot going on. The trader Elizabeth has a hat on. A hat! They usually aren't that interesting in this game, but a hat can make all the difference. Of course, this Elizabeth has the high jump and the sword, but you probably guessed that. This is the outfit Elizabeth was when she was declared the Pirate King, which is already enough reason to bump this variant above all other variants of Elizabeth we've seen thus far. And actually, it's the only reason. And sure, I guess the outfit is cool. The hat, that's about it. I've never really agreed with making Elizabeth the Pirate King. Just because Sao Feng gave her a MacGuffin? Pish posh. I would have voted for Barbossa personally. But oh yeah, that reminds me. I didn't mention in the Barbossa segment, but Barbossa was also a member of the Brethren Court who presides over the Caspian Sea, which is stupid. When was Barbossa ever in the Caspian Sea? He was the first mate of Jack Sparrow who had his own sea to preside over. The writers literally just picked a sea not already taken and just assigned it to Barbossa. But it's still more sea than what Elizabeth was in charge of. Until the Brethren Court meeting, that is. Now we've reached the end of the line for the Elizabeth Swann in this series. She has the most variants in this game, and I'd say her departure is a sign of how far we've come in this relatively short series. We see Elizabeth in this authentic Singaporean garb in the third film, conveniently because they went to Singapore. This is also what Elizabeth was wearing when Sao Feng gruesomely died. Man, I hope she didn't get any blood on those clothes. You can tell that's top of the line fabric, but I digress. Elizabeth received Sao Feng's piece of 8, which made her a captain, which is why this variant is called Captain Elizabeth, no matter how new of a captain she is at this point. Robe's Captain Elizabeth also has the sword and high jump, so she's not special compared to any of the other sword Elizabeths, but her outfit is by far the coolest, which is my only basis of ranking at this point for Elizabeth Swann. But we're officially done with her, so I guess let's move on. This and the next two guys are more generic Black Pearl crewmates that never show up past the first movie. Past generic crewmates got a little something unique to set them apart, like Mallet and his mallet. These next two guys, though, they're so generic that they just get the stereotypical pirate weapon, the sword. Lucky for these guys, though, that gives them a huge edge in this game, as the sword is unsurprisingly one of the most used ability in a game about pirates. And, as I've pounded into your heads a bajillion times now, the generic Black Pearl crewmates get to keep their underwater walking ability. Both are needed quite a bit if you want to 100% complete the game, so Twig isn't a bad choice of character. Well, he's not the worst. I can attest that I've never chosen to play Twig willingly. Playing him against my will, though, for fear of my life, well, that's another story. As I said with Twig, this guy is so generic that he doesn't get anything aside from the bare minimum, which actually works to his advantage in this ranking. Scratch is identical to Twig in abilities with his sword and underwater walk, so the big question is, why did I rank Scratch over Twig? Surely the most asked question so far in the series, and something you all have been dying to know since about a minute or so ago. So let me tell you, and try to stretch this segment out as long as I can until I can be done. Firstly, the hair. I don't believe this Lego hairpiece exists physically, so that makes his hair extra rare. 2, the name. If I was a pirate captain, in this case Barbossa, and I wanted my men to pillage Port Royal to kidnap Elizabeth or something, would I want a guy named Twig to do it, or a guy named Scratch to do it? Obviously Scratch, at least over Twig, because how do you think Twig got his name? He's a twig. That's not a compliment, I don't think. Now, gender roles dictate that scratching is not a quote-unquote manly thing to do, but I'd rather scratch people than be a twig any day. It's just common sense. Am I done yet?
An often overlooked aspect of LEGO games on this channel are the extras, as fun as they are. I mean, I ranked the super items and hats in LEGO Movie 2 game since I couldn't rank anything else, but
On the whole, I've almost denied their existence, but I get requests all the time to rank the extras of LEGO games, and I mean, I've considered it, but ultimately decided against it. The reason why is because most LEGO games generally have the same extras. There might be a few extras specific to a game, but they all share the same type of extras. Stud multipliers, invincibility, what have you. But lucky for you guys, for this part's introduction segment, I'm ranking the 20 extras in LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm going to try to be quick about it, so half the video isn't just this. But, I mean, I've said that in the past, like, for example, my Jackbox Party Pack 4 ranking, where I rank the monsters and monster-seeking monsters. Go check that video out if you haven't. But I can't keep any promises. It is what it is. So, let's just get started. Number 20, disguises. The extras that do nothing but change the appearance of your characters or your view are always going to be last in ranking. Groucho glasses will never help me in these games. Number 19, extra toggle. Extra toggle has appeared in several LEGO games, and it's pretty interesting. Basically, with it on, you can switch to characters not in the roster, typically NPCs that you see in levels. They change depending on the level you play, but most of the time they're enemies that you fight, and I mean, honestly, not very exciting. In the Tortuga level, you can switch to Giselle and Scarlet, you know, the two girls that slap Jack Sparrow and stuff, but other than that, all these characters are on the same level of characters we saw in like the first two parts, so they don't really get much notice from me. Number 18, Red Hat Finder. Red hats are the things you find to unlock the extras for purchase. There are 20 throughout the hub world, and this extra points them out to you. It seems pretty redundant. If you happen to find this one last, then it would be completely useless because you would have all the extras available for purchase or unlocked already. Number 17, Minikit Bottle Finder. This works the same as the Red Hat Finder, just for minikits and levels. Since there are 200 minikits as opposed to only 20 red hats, the minikit Bottle Finder is automatically more useful. Number 16, Character Treasure. Enemies now drop studs when you defeat them. Neat, but not as much of a bonus as you think. Number 15, Treasure Magnet. Same deal as Character Treasure in that it's an added bonus and pretty useful when filling that true pirate meter. Number 14, Always Double Treasure. This one is just a 2x stud multiplier, or should I say another 2x stud multiplier, since there's a separate 2x stud multiplier, which is actually number 13. Really shows how much they had to stretch to get these 20 extras. Number 12 through number 9 are the rest of the stud multipliers, which are 4x, 6x, 8x, and 10x. The multipliers are pretty lower than I thought they would be in ranking, but it's because the multipliers are pointless after you buy everything. No point in getting studs if there's nothing to buy. The rest of the extras are useful whether or not you bought everything. So I guess let's carry on with that. Number 8, extra hearts. You have 6 hearts instead of 4. Less dying, you know. Number 7, regenerate hearts. Your hearts regenerate now, which is useful in combat. Number 6, breathe underwater. Characters without underwater walk can now breathe underwater instead of their blue hearts ticking down when underwater. Number 5, fast forge. You forge faster. Self-explanatory. Number 4 is fast dig because you dig more. Number 3 is fast build because you build most. Number 2, fall rescue. This one saved me a pretty penny amount of times. You no longer fall to your death, with the game actually saving you. Definitely useful if you drop 2,000 unrecoverable studs. And number 1 is, of course, invincibility. I no longer have to try in combat. Not that I was trying that hard to begin with in a LEGO game, but yep, that's it. I did it. How'd I do on time? I see a wall of text on the script, but I have no idea how long that'll translate into video form. But however long it is you saw it. You can see the you know, the video bar thing. But I did it. I ranked the extras. Let's just move on. Now, I was sincerely stretching for time with that last guy, but now we have a third cursed crewmate that has the exact same 2 mechanics, with his sword and an underwater walk. So, how will I justify his ranking? I'll go with his name, Clubba. Succinct, straight to the point. He's a clubber. He clubs people, but if that's the case, why doesn't he have a club? A sword slices. It doesn't club. I know from experience. Maybe the sword on the flat side could be a blunt object, but whatever. The appearance of the character is something I touched on with Scratch, and Clubba has even less going on. No offense to bald people. But on the bright side, he's the most stereotypical skeleton when he steps into the moonlight. I might have not ever mentioned this. Whenever a cursed crewmate with the underwater walk ability walks into the moonlight, they turn into their skeleton forms. This is interesting because this happens only in the Isla de Muerta level, or in the hub world if you grab that Aztec coin near the lighthouse and turn into one as well, with any character you please. Here we see a new ability, but one that will dominate a good portion of the remaining characters. First of all, this is Jimmy Legs. Do not ask me why he's called that. Maybe he has some stellar looking legs under those rags, but I'm not interested in taking a look for myself. Jimmy Legs was the bosun of the Flying Dutchman. A bosun, I hope I'm saying that right. I think I am. I'm pretty sure Davy Jones said it in the movie, actually.
Your issue will be like staying here for the bosun's hand. Your own.
But a bosun is basically the guy who manages the crew on a ship, so naturally he gets a whip. I've covered whips before as a weapon, and that they suck. The fish-like qualities of the Flying Dutchman crew unlocks 2 bare minimum abilities, and Jimmy Legs has both. The first one is a familiar one, the underwater walk. Turns out, whether you identify as a Flying Dutchman crewmate or a Cursed Black Pearl crewmate, you get the underwater walk no matter what. The other ability we see with Jimmy Legs is the new one, Coral. Essentially, there's a green blob of moss that can be accessed by those with the Coral ability, and then they go somewhere else. It's pretty commonly used for free play purposes, but there's one level where you play a Coral character, and it's pretty neat to actually play it in the story mode of the level. All Flying Dutchman crewmates from here on out will have the underwater walk and Coral at the very least. There's quite a few random Dutchman crewmates with the weirdest names crammed into these last 30 segments, and this one is no exception. And now, like Coal Emergency Room, I have to guess the pronunciation for this guy, and I'm just going to take a stab at it, okay? Hadras? 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 Hadras is what I'm going with. Ability-wise, Hadras does not differ from Jimmy Legs. There are 2 reasons why I ranked Hadras higher. One, I don't like the name Jimmy Legs. It's just strange and out of place compared to the other names you'll see with the Dutchman crew. The second is weapon choice. Sure, Jimmy Legs has a subpar whip, but Hadras has these weird knuckle knife thingies on each hand. It's pretty cool, and Hadras is the only character with these unique weapons. Also, you can wear Hadras's shell hat if you defeat him in a level. Does Jimmy Legs have wearable body parts? Don't say his legs. Okay, I know both Cursed crewmates and Dutchman crewmates, they both get the underwater walk by default. What if I told you zombies get it too? Yes, zombies exist in the Pirates of the Caribbean universe thanks to Blackbeard. But with Cursed crewmates, it makes sense because of that one scene where they walked underwater. Dutchman crewmates, it makes sense because they operate underwater. But zombies? Underwater walk does not make sense for zombies. If anything, zombies are technically dead, so they should float because dead bodies always float on water, and don't ask me why I know that. But yeah, zombies get underwater walk. Only the officers of the Queen Anne's Revenge are zombified to stay in line to prevent a mutiny. But zombies, aside from the underwater walk, get another ability, which is strength. You know the one. Use the orange handles and pull open walls, chests, whatever else. Gunner's job was to discipline crewmates, so of course he gets a whip. The weapon choice really kind of throws me off because his name is Gunner. Can I give him a gun? He's the 27th best out of 80, so who am I to judge? Macus here is a member of the Flying Dutchman, and his shtick is the fact that he has a hammerhead. You know, a hammer head. He looks like a hammerhead shark, that's what I'm trying to say. But a humanoid shark, like Victor Crumb in the Goblet of Fire, but without the buffness. Anyway, Macus has a whopping 3 abilities in this game, which is a huge. Of course he gets the Flying Dutchman crewmate gimmies, Coral, and Underwater Walk. The extra special something he brings is the ranged ability. We've seen ranged before in the pistol, spear, and blow dart wielders, but never like this. Ladies and gentlemen, and by ladies and gentlemen, I mean gentlemen, because 98.1% of you are. Macus wields an axe. Axe wielders in this game can toss them to get bullseye targets. It's a shame because the reason for axes being able to be thrown is because of one of the main characters of the original trilogy, but we haven't covered him yet, so I guess I have to spoil the axe wielding here. Oh well, it's not like you guys didn't know what an axe was before now, so... Oh man, it's time for that game. You know the one. The Guess the Pronunciation game. And wouldn't you know it, we got a double header. The Try to Find Differences in 4 characters with the exact same ability game comes right after this one, the Pronunciation game. First things first though, the guy's name. I'm going to have to do the same thing as I did with Kohler and Hadras and just take a stab and stick with it. Cole Nico. Cole as in Cole from Ninjago, and Nico as in the word nicotine if you delete the last half of the word. Cole Cigarette. And man, am I on a roll. Anyway, Cole Nico here is yet another Flying Dutchman crewmate, and kind of a basic one, if I'm being honest. Nothing against pirate do-rags, but LEGO sure likes to use it as the default hat piece for insignificant pirates, especially in the pirate sets that have come out over the years. But as a Flying Dutchman pirate, you already know what 2 abilities Cole Nico gets right off the bat. That's right, it's Coral and Underwater Walk. The third one, well, I'll just save it for the next segment, as I'll need things to talk about. But if you can observe the game footage of Cole Nico, you probably already know. Next up is Angler, and at first I wasn't going to blame TT Games for this, but then I looked up what Angler actually looks like in the movies, and I'm giving full blame to TT Games. He just looks so bland in the game, and so I just assumed he looked bland in the movie. He looks pretty cool based on the one out-of-focus picture I could find. His concept art is cool too. I know the minifigure technology was terribly outdated back then compared to now, but surely they could have done better than this. They gave him the little angler tentacle thing on his forehead, so I guess it's not terrible, just not optimal. Enough to earn him his mandatory coral and underwater walk abilities, though. You know, I did mention an ability that Angler, Cole Nico, and the upcoming 2 characters have, but I'm just so deep in this segment, I feel like I should just push off that third ability until the next guy. Sorry guys, I know how much you're itching to know. I swear, I just said I was going to do something in this segment, but then I saw the name of this character, Clanker. Ring any bells? Well, it's a trip down memory lane for me. 7 years ago, at the time of this recording, I was working on part 10 of my first ever LEGO game ranking, talking about bounty hunters and whatnot. Oh, look at me using 4:3 aspect ratio for some reason, and no, I won't unmute this. I don't need to hear my inexperienced narration voice. Looking back at old videos is a double-edged sword. On one hand, nostalgia. On the other hand, an unbearable cringe. Anyway, what is the game I'm doing a ranking on? Oh, right, LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean. Clanker, who shares the name with what clones call droids, which is what made me go down that memory lane trip. He's a Flying Dutchman crewmate with Coral and Underwater Walk and whatever. Really, I only ranked him higher than Angler and Cole Nico because his name is Clanker. But his last ability that he shares with Cole Nico and Angler is... Oh, would you look at the script line quota? We gotta move on. Shucks, sorry about that, folks. It's a shame we have to cover Will Turner's surprise ocean zombie dad before Will Turner himself, but we already covered his axe. So he probably won't mind this either. Bootstrap Bill is not only the father of Will Turner, but was also a member of the Black Pearl during the mutiny of Captain Jack Sparrow. Dude regretted it, gave his gold piece to Will, and was shot out of a cannon by Barbossa. Then made a deal with Davy Jones at the bottom of the ocean to serve a sentry on the Flying Dutchman. Yeah, the guy got shafted, but I think being a crewmate under Davy Jones is miles better than chilling at the bottom of the ocean for eternity. And what are the chances Davy Jones would be visiting the bottom of the ocean at the exact place that Bootstrap Bill was? Surely, the best thing that could have happened to him at that point, since he was literally at rock bottom. And hey, he went from just the undercover walk because of the Aztec curse, to underwater walk and coral because of the Flying Dutchman. Oh, and also sword. Sword is his third ability, just like Clanker, Angler, and Cole Nico, but Come on, you're smart probably. You didn't need me to tell you that. Come on. This guy is one I'm shocked to see in this game, and even more shocking that he is up this high on the list. Frankly, it's because of his exclusive but not really exclusive ability, but I'll get to that. First, let's get familiar with who this guy even is. Brown skeleton with brown Joker hair, right? Well, at first glance, yes, but he was featured in a scene in Dead Man's Chest. Wyvern's whole thing was that he was merging with the whole of the Flying Dutchman, which makes his addition to the roster even more confusing. How is this guy out of the hole? Even though he's not so much a crewmate of the Flying Dutchman and more like a part of the Flying Dutchman, he still gets the complementary Dutchman abilities, the underwater walk and coral abilities. His kind of exclusive ability is the light ability. Throughout the game, there are giant tentacles everywhere. Davy Jones, he's doing his thing. Blocking passages, chilling in barrels, you name it, they're there. Having a source of light makes them go away. These sources of light are similar to shovels in that they're everywhere. You don't typically need someone to wield a lantern full time. Wyvern does anyway. Wyvern's lantern makes for an alright weapon, also similar to the shovel, but not anything really worth your wear.
Contrary to popular belief, the idea of post-credit scenes existed before Nick Fury decided to assemble the Avengers. They're rare outside of the superhero movie genre for sure, but they do exist. An example I like to use is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, which showcases a Professor Lockhart at the brink of insanity after a failed memory charm, one he accidentally cast on himself. But Harry Potter is not the subject here, at least not in this series. Wink. What I'm trying to get at here is that Pirates of the Caribbean, every movie, has a post-credit scene. I was going to save the ranking of the extras for the finale, but these last two parts, I'm ranking things I deem as more important. So, for this one, I'm ranking the post-credit scenes. Spoilers. Number 5, Dead Men Tell No Tales. As it should come as no surprise, the fifth movie is the worst at everything when it comes to the franchise. Will and Elizabeth are sleeping, and Will has a nightmare that Davy Jones is in his bedroom. Then it shows barnacles on the ground. Not sure if this was supposed to tease the return of Davy Jones, but there'll for sure be no return at all. So this series is dead. Number 4, On Stranger Tides. This one shows a Jack Sparrow voodoo doll washing up on the island Angelica was marooned on. First of all, what are the chances that the voodoo doll floated from the waterfall it was thrown off of to that very specific island? If the doll was face down in the water, would Jack drown? And if Angelica had the voodoo doll, why didn't we see Jack literally bend backwards and die in the fifth movie? Is there a certain distance from the victim that the voodoo doll can be for it to be effective? Too many questions for literally no payoff. Number 3, Curse of the Black Pearl. This one shows Jack, Barbossa's monkey, nabbing an Aztec coin and becoming Skelemonkey. Doesn't do much for me personally, but I don't hate it like I do with the last two post-credit scenes. Number 2, Dead Man's Chest. This one shows the guard dog being shown as a deity of the Pelagos' tribesmen, similar to Jack at the start of the film. Sure, it would have meant he would eventually get eaten, but he doesn't, since we do see this dog in the third film, so he escaped somehow. I was mostly relieved he wasn't eaten at the beginning of the movie, since he was the distraction used so that the Black Pearl could escape without a hitch. And finally, number 1, At World's End. This shows Will Turner 10 years after he became the new captain of the Flying Dutchman, visiting Port Royal so that Will can see Elizabeth and their 10-year-old son from afar. A nice bookend to the original trilogy, even if the fifth movie kind of tarnished it. Don't get me wrong, it's nice that Will reunited with his family, but the rest of the movie? No thanks. But that's the ranking. Not sure if it's surprising to anyone, but I felt like ranking the post-credit scenes were worth doing, so thanks for sitting through that. The second half to the pirate comic relief duo Ragetti. It's been a while since we covered Pintel in the series, but this was his partner in crime. They are rarely ever seen apart, if at all. Ragetti is definitely the more famous one of the two, and it's for one simple reason. His eye, or lack thereof. Or not lacking thereof? I don't know, it's really a crapshoot if the eye is there or not. But Ragetti has 2 abilities in this game. I know we just covered a bunch of Flying Dutchman crewmates with 3 abilities, but honestly, Rigetti and the next guy are ranked above for status alone. I know most of the Flying Dutchman crewmates have more abilities than Rigetti, but if it came down to either playing Rigetti or literally anyone from the last part, Rigetti sweeps every time. Anyways, those two abilities of Rigetti are the sword and target abilities, and if I didn't sell you on the status argument as to why Rigetti is ranked higher, then this next talking point will win you over. Want to guess what Rigetti uses for his target ability? His eye. He tosses his eye at targets. Hook, line, and sinker, baby. I know I've convinced you all. Now, the whole status thing I was talking about with Rigetti, this is the guy it applies to the most. On paper, Will Turner, one of the main characters of the original trilogy, only gets 2 abilities. Now, both of his abilities make sense, and no other ability in this game would make sense with this guy, but it's an absolute injustice that he would be ranked under the entire Flying Dutchman crew. Some of them, fine. But all of them? I'm sorry, I can't do that to him. I hope you understand. But if you don't, then dislike the video or something. I don't know. Then undislike and like the video again. And then subscribe while you're at it. But Will Turner's abilities are the sword and target abilities, using an axe for his targeting. What surprises me, but also not really, is the fact that this is Will Turner's one and only variant. I guess I don't recall Will switching up his outfits a lot in the movies, but the other 2 main characters in the original trilogy had at least 5. Hell, even Angelica had 2, so what's the deal? The fact that this is the one and only Will Turner is yet another reason to give Will Turner the pass over the Flying Dutchman crewmates. I mean, if there was a new LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean game, there might be a variant of Will Turner as the captain of the Flying Dutchman, which would give him coral and underwater walk. So, yeah, in a hypothetical situation where this, LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean reboot game existed, Will Turner would deservedly be ranked above the Flying Dutchman crew, which is yet another reason why I deemed Will Turner as better than them. So, take that, internet. Please let me have this. Next up, we have the Spaniard, one of the secondary antagonists of the 4th film. The Spaniard is the most trusted agent of the Spanish king at the time this movie took place. Ooh, so edgy. In the movie, though, he just seemed like a last-second nuisance. We all care about the true big bad. This guy has the ability to turn people into zombies. Zombies, I tell you. Oh yeah, and this other guy has some other affiliation with no name other than being a member of said affiliation, and he's also here to be forever young. Okay, but the Spaniard is pretty good in this game, funnily enough. The dude has a sword, which is expected of a guy who is trusted by the king of Spain. But the other ability he has is the real draw to his character, which is the explosive ability. A classic ability that's present in most LEGO games where silver LEGO objects can be exploded, as well as the weapon causing the explosion, usually being pretty good as a weapon. I say usually because there are 2 weapons that allow a character to have the explosive ability in this game, and one is straight up broken by how good it is compared to the other. The Spaniard, well, he has the other. It's a stereotypical bomb. A black ball with a wick sticking out of it. The other explosive weapon, which is the really good one, is actually owned by only one guy in this game, and he's obviously ranked above the Spaniard. Yeah, the round bomb is nice and all, but in combat, it's just a little hard to use. And you can't target bullseyes with the round bomb, which makes sense, but the round bomb sticks to silver objects before exploding, so why can't it stick to bullseyes? Yeah, sorry guy, you don't get a name. You get a big tattoo though, and a sword, and some muscle, but a name? Sorry, you forfeit that the second you step into the bathhouse of Sao Feng. And it's not like the Spaniard, where having no name is cool and edgy. Your title is given to you because you're pathetic and not worth the trouble of being given a name. Yeah, this guy's actually unlocked in the story, in the Singapore level. I think the main reason this guy is here in the game is because the game had to introduce you to the strength ability in the story, and they saw the sweaty big guy in the bathhouse and said, yeah, let's put him in the game. Captain Teague? Who? Who's that? Guard Dog's owner? Jack Sparrow's dad? Whatever, get Tattoo Pirate Guy in here. How do you know he's even a pirate? What if he's just a patron of the bathhouse? This guy actually does have a wiki page, but I'm pretty sure it's only because of his existence in this game. The wiki page is as bare as his torso, in case you're wondering. As I hinted at in the beginning of the segment though, Tattoo Pirate gets the sword and strength abilities. Not too shabby for a man without a name. Garhang was a crewmate on the Queen Anne's Revenge during the events of the fourth film, and was one of the guys you needed to complete the Queen Anne's Revenge level. Remember how I was talking about that chain reaction sequence during this level that the game made you go through with the Cook and Scrum and Salomon? Well, in that 4-step chain reaction, Garhang was the second or third step depending on the order you do things. You use Scrum to satisfy his musical cravings so that Garhang will open the gate, unleashing the cold-blooded murderer so that he can be given an egg. Garhang has the strength ability and also a sword, so yeah, he plays exactly the same as the Tattoo Pirate. But he's ranked above the Tattoo Pirate for one simple reason. He has a name. That's pretty much it. And hey, who's to say the Tattoo Pirate and Garhang aren't the same person? Maybe Tattoo Pirate lost some weight in between the events of At World's End and On Stranger Tides. I mean, I can see it. We've done it. We've finally done it. Not finishing the series. We have a little ways to go. No, I mean the end of the Cursed Crewmates. This is the certified best crewmate of the Black Pearl on this list, and it's Jacoby. He was a bearded guy who got blown up mere minutes before the curse was broken, the poor guy. I can only imagine how pissed he was in the land beyond the living after finding out how close he was to freedom. But naturally, his demise was made his main ability in this game. Jacoby possesses a bomb, the explosive weapon inferior to the certain other one I can't legally talk about yet, but the bomb is still pretty good regardless, especially considering how few characters actually have the explosive ability. And, as a cursed crewmate, he has the underwater walk. It felt like ages since we covered Captain Barbossa. Back in those days, he just had a singular ability with a sword, and not a singular leg like he does with this variant. This is Privateer Barbossa, when Barbossa joined the ranks of the British Navy to get back at Blackbeard for him rocking his boat, and then proceeded to put that boat in a bottle. Privateer Barbossa obviously is a huge upgrade over the regular Barbossa. Yeah, he may have lost a leg, but he gained 2 new abilities, so it's basically a net positive. First things first, the sword ability stays. It always does. But the new ones are more interesting. The first new ability is Barbossa's new pet. No, not the monkey. It's the frogs. In the fourth film, Barbossa takes up a hobby of collecting poison dart frogs so that he can use the poison on his weaponry. This leads to Barbossa using it on Blackbeard at the end of the movie. Spoilers. They barely spend any time on this poison dart frog thing, and they made it a whole ability in this game. I love it when TT Games does this, like how in LEGO Indiana Jones they made Elsa being scared of rats like a whole thing in the game, even though I think she had a reaction anyone would have if they were in a room filled to the brim with wet rats. But these frogs, wielded by Privateer Barbossa, can be thrown to hit targets. So yeah, I think the frogs take the cake as the strangest ranged weaponry so far in this game. The last ability, if you want to call it that, is the peg leg. Yes, it actually does something. Basically, jump in the air and press the attack button, and instead of slamming down a weapon, like most characters do, Privateer Barbossa slams down the peg leg. It's actually a pretty good method of attacking enemies, and it's not even exclusive to Privateer Barbossa, so I can count it as an ability. But overall, this is a pretty solid character, as characters probably should be at this point in the list. Based on this guy's abilities, I had assumed he was a member of Blackbeard's zombie gang. Trademarking that, by the way. But no, this guy was the bosun of the Black Pearl for the events of the first film, so this is a cursed crewmate. I know I made a big stink about Jacoby being the last one, but frankly I'm just too lazy to go back and change the script and act like I know everything, when it's pretty clear by now for longtime viewers that I definitely don't know everything, and that I should own the fact that I'm just so dumb. Anyway, the reason why I said I thought he was a Blackbeard zombie gangster is because of his abilities. Blackbeard zombies have both the strength and underwater walk as, gimme abilities. This guy has both of those, but it's just a coincidence that he also has the strength ability on account of him being the bosun in addition to his single gimme ability, the underwater walk, if that makes sense. Finally, bosun has the sword, but that's no surprise. Just some rando with a conveniently good set of abilities. That's what this guy is. Okay, this guy, I wasn't mistaken. I had this dude in physical LEGO form. I know this is a member of the Blackbeard Zombie Gang, TM, because he was in the Queen Anne's Revenge set. And he's also, like, the second in command, I think. expert of boating lingo, but the quartermaster at least seemed to have had an important role on the ship. The quartermaster is pretty similar to the bosun, as in exactly the same. Quartermaster gets the strength and underwater walk abilities right up front, for some reason. I've said in the past, but underwater walk just makes no sense for zombies. I guess it's not bad for the zombies in the game, and I think the developers wanted to make the characters you see in the late game have more going on than characters you see in the first 3 campaigns, but really, it makes no sense. In addition though, just like the bosun, Quartermaster has a sword that he wields as well, so that's all dandy, I guess. Of all characters that just barely missed the final 10, it's this little goblin-like Dutchman crewmate. Penrod is a spunky little fellow with a unique running animation. Man, look at him go. Penrod has a record-breaking 4 abilities, which is insane for this game. Now, obviously, as a crewmate on the Flying Dutchman, he gets those abilities that are assigned to him for his affiliations. Penrod has both the coral and underwater walk. The other 2 abilities are fairly obvious just by looking at him. Of course, he has the short ability based on his shorter stature. Also, that weird ski pole thing that he wields allows for sword levers to be used. So, I mean, personally, the crab claw he has on the other arm would have been a lot cooler weapon. But hey, he would have definitely be lower on the list if it weren't for that, green Cheeto of a weapon. We're already here at the finale of this series, and I believe there's no better way to start off the final 10 than to rank the movies themselves. I don't plan to break down the movies play by play for these rankings, but just to give you my quick thoughts and why I ranked them the way I did. And remember, this is my opinion, so I'm probably correct. I thought I'd have more to say before jumping into the ranking, but really there's little I haven't said about this franchise at this point in the series, so let's get going. It shouldn't be any surprise to you guys that Dead Men Tell No Tales is my least favorite, a shameless cash grab on Disney's part that has little in common with the rest of the franchise. For a movie series that's no stranger to MacGuffins, this movie really did not try to hide it with a trident that conveniently breaks all curses. Seriously? Not to mention the annoying side characters that seemed very shoehorned in. Not Gibbs though. I love me some Gibbs. Number 4 is On Stranger Tides. This movie already had the disadvantage of being the film after a naturally concluding trilogy. And, I mean, also a change in directors is jarring, to say the least. Angelica was a weak character that apparently has a past with Jack, though it's not believable at all. Other than a few entertaining action scenes, this movie seemed to be a slog. Number 3, Dead Man's Chest. Even though it's number 3, I still enjoy it a lot. This film went all in on the wackiness that the first film dipped its toes in. Also, the Isla Cruces scenes in this film might be my favorite in the entire movie series. And honestly, Dead Man's Chest is pretty interchangeable with my number 2, the OG, Curse of the Black Pearl. Aside from the skeleton army parts, it was a relatively grounded pirate movie. Of course, there were those moments where the supernatural took over, but I enjoyed watching Jack and Will start to get along despite their wildly different backgrounds. And finally, my number 1 At World's End. This film seems like the Avengers Endgame of the Pirates movies, even though this film franchise came out first. This film served as kind of a part 2 to Dead Man's Chest and wrapped up the arcs of many a character. It's a shame they had to drag it out into 2 more films, as this was a great conclusion to the franchise. But hey, I mean, that's my personal opinion. That's my ranking right there. I'm aware my takes aren't consistent with the public opinion, but films like these should be judged by personal enjoyment rather than actual filmmaking by the filmmaker anyway. Maybe I'm making excuses, but doing this series, ranking these characters, really gained me more of an appreciation for the pirates of the Caribbean. On Stranger Tides, after coming off of a highly successful trilogy, needed to switch things up, and their way of doing that is to introduce the existence of mermaids, among other things. But for the purposes of this segment, mermaids. Serena here had maybe the most awkward romance to grace this franchise with Philip, who you may remember as the guy who sings, and that's it in this game. Coincidentally, Serena here is the reason why Philip has any abilities at all. If you recall, Philip had the voice ability and could shatter glass. Serena is the only other character in this entire game, aside from Extra Toggle, to have the voice ability. And it's pretty clear that Serena is the reason why the voice ability exists in this game at all. The subpar singing of Philip is not enough to shatter glass, realistically. But Serena's Hell Scream? Yeah, probably. Serena, obviously, is a female, which also gives her the high jump ability. It's strange because in this game, Serena shouldn't be able to walk on land, but it's not like TT Games is going to pass up making a mermaid a character in their game, so they made it so Serena can walk on land by allowing her to grow legs. Then, as soon as she jumps into the water, boom, her tail is back, which leads us to her final ability, the underwater walk, since she is a mermaid and all. However, it always looks weird when she swims. I'd imagine her swim to be, elegant, that she's swimming like a dolphin or something. But her underwater walk wants her to sink to the bottom. But when you swim, you mash A to keep her off the bottom of the body of water, which makes Serena look like she's T-posing underwater at all times. But her nigh-exclusive ability of voice in conjunction with her underwater walk and gender-given high jump ability makes her the best female character in this game. Now, if objectivity wasn't a factor in my ranking, there's a good chance Marty would be number 1. I chose this guy almost every time when I'm going into a level while I was 100% completing the game. The 8 characters ahead of Marty on this list that we'll cover soon enough are better on a technical standpoint since they're pretty essential to fully complete the game, but if this ranking was purely based on favorites, Marty is the man. Marty makes combat non-existent in the best way. You see that blunderbuss he has? Well, it's a monster, and it's exclusive to him. This blunderbuss can not only hit targets, but also blow up silver Lego objects, which automatically makes this weapon the objective best form of ranged weaponry in this game. Yes, I'm including frogs. Sorry, frog fandom. But in addition to that blunderbuss, Marty is of shorter stature, so he has the short ability. But the shortness is just the icing on the cake. The weapon is the real draw to this guy. And as I've mentioned, combat is no more with Marty. One shot from the blunderbuss is enough to take out a guy in one hit. Multiple guys if they're close enough together. And that reason is enough for Marty to earn his place as not only the 9th best character in the game, but also my personal favorite. All this talk about Marty, and now I have to talk about some measly Flying Dutchman crewmate. And yes, we're not done with them, but this is the last standard crewmate, so that's something at least. There's nothing special about Crash, at least not in the movies. He's yet another random fish man on the fish ship. But luckily for him, he's got the luck of the draw when it came to random ability assignment, which happened for both Aztec Curse crewmates and Flying Dutchman crewmates. You know, how the developers tacked on random abilities to these otherwise non-differentiable characters. For some reason, Crash got 2 whole random abilities on top of his given abilities as the Dutchman crewmate, which were Coral and Underwater Walk. So first of all, Crash gets a sword, and for some characters, that would be enough. Specifically, that would be enough for Clanker, Angler, Kolnico, and even Bootstrap Bill. But for Crash, TT Games decided that one sword wouldn't be enough. No, he gets strength as well, which is truly what drove Crash to the top 10. 4 abilities is a good enough reason to make it so high up on this list, no matter how insignificant the character. Isn't that right, Crash? This guy right here. If you watch part 1 of this series by itself, you may notice that I was initially counting down from 79, not 80. That's because this specific Jack Sparrow is not unlocked through traditional means. This guy is unlocked via a code, and his icon is behind even the custom characters. My silly brain saw the icon and thought the locked character symbol in the roster was just another custom character. Thanks to the comments by you guys, I quickly realized my mistake, and I fixed it for the subsequent parts in, the supercut as well. The worst part is, I did in fact know about this character. I remember unlocking him like a decade ago when I first played this game. For some reason, this guy's existence just completely blanked from my mind during the entire planning process for the series. I got trolled by a 12-year-old game. Fantastic. But this Jack Sparrow, he needs no introduction. I've been mentioning this character for this entire series, and we finally get to see him in the finale. The reason why the Jack Sparrows, of which there are 5, are so high on this list is because they have 2 exclusive abilities. That's right, 2. And both are used an insane amount. That's why they're so high up. This Jack Sparrow actually has the same exact name as the standard one. Not even a word in parentheses to distinguish it. Just Jack Sparrow. Also, the character icon has no hat, but when you switch to him, he does. So I don't know what the deal is with that, but since he has a hat, I named him Captain Jack Sparrow in the transition, just for distinguishing purposes. The reason why this one is ranked as the lowest Jack is this one lacks a sword, while all the others do. What sets this special Jack apart the most, as you can probably see, is that he's always dancing, with the Pirate's Life for Me song playing whenever you switch to him, and causes any NPC in his vicinity to dance as well, which means enemies no longer attack you. This Jack Sparrow is basically Scrum, but you don't need to press a button to make people dance. The dancing Jack Sparrow without a sword only has the 2 abilities exclusive to the Jacks, but I'm going to save those for the coming segments. Here's the Waistcoat Jack Sparrow. This is probably the Jack you're playing as for the majority of the story levels that you play. This is Jack Sparrow without the cool captain garb, as in the hat and coat. It's beta Jack, basically. But just because he's not swagged out doesn't mean he's useless. He did beat the Dancing Jack after all. The first ability I want to cover is one of his exclusive ones, his compass. The compass is probably the biggest MacGuffin in the franchise, and it seems to get only more important as the franchise goes on. The compass points to the thing you desire the most, so naturally, it's a hot item for everyone. But in this game, it's something only ever held by any of the Jack Sparrows. It basically serves as its own type of collectible in this game. In every level, there are 8 things you need to find with the compass. And if you're in a separate area from an item you're trying to find, it'll be grayed out on the compass wheel. But if you're in the same area, it shows up and you can select it and be led to the item, which may be under a mound of sand that needs to be dug up, or maybe it'll just reveal itself to you straight up. Like, there's a ton of ways that these items can show up. But like I said, there's 8 per level, totaling to 160 items to be found with the compass. And you need to find them all if you want to 100% the game. And only Jack can do it. So now do you see why Jack Sparrows are taking up the majority of the top 10? Next up we have the Chief Jack Sparrow, only playable in the story during the first level of the Dead Man's Chest campaign, Pelagosto. Not only is this the only level you play as Chief Jack Sparrow, but it's the only time you get to play in those bone balls. I like it when games introduce one-off mechanics and then you just never revisit them ever again. This game does that with these bone ball cages, but it makes sense given the happenings of the film in question. You use these cages to roll around, to open doors, and to get to higher platforms. Even though in the game you can enter and exit the balls as you please, which wasn't the case in the movie, but it's still fun. Chief Jack Sparrow was ranked over the Waistcoat Jack Sparrow because of the design, since they have the same exact abilities. The face paint is cool and definitely more interesting than the Waistcoat Jack design. I guess the ability I'll cover for this Jack is one I already hinted at with what the Dancing Jack lacks, a sword. All Jack Sparrows aside from the Dancing Jack has a sword, as he should. This is the standard Jack Sparrow. He's the first icon in the entire roster and the third character you play as in the game. The first 2 being Will Turner and Mr. Brown in a fight against Jack Sparrow. Since this Jack Sparrow has no difference in abilities from the last 2, of course he's ranked above the other 2 because of his captain swag. He has his hat and coat, and that's all he needs. But now it's time for his second exclusive ability, improvisation. I know that kind of gives you no idea as to what that means if you're unfamiliar with this game. Hell, even if you are familiar with this game, you might not know what I mean by that. But I'm sure you've seen it. Basically, there are those pulleys that, when interacted with by Jack, take him somewhere new. It's basically the grapple ability that we see in other LEGO games, but insanely exclusive for no good reason. You remember the character named Grapple? And I said that he should have an ability that we wouldn't see until the finale? This is that ability. You can't tell me that Grapple, a guy with a grapple, can't grapple. Come on. I know the developers wanted Jack to be more valuable in the game since he's the main character, but he already has the compass. I mean, don't gatekeep abilities. That's a pretty messed up thing to do. especially in this game where they're so sparse. The thought process behind why it's called improvisation is because some of Jack Sparrow's most famous scenes include him improvising to get himself out of situations by doing something familiar to cutting a rope to, pull him up somewhere. Yeah, they could have named it something better, in my opinion, like, I don't know, Grapple? No relation. It has nothing to do with the guy named Grapple. I'm just saying it would have been a good name for it. But, I mean, at the end of the day, the names of abilities is not the purpose of the series, it's the characters. So, whatever. Here is the last Jack Sparrow on this list. In the span of one part, we see the start and end of the Sparrow dynasty. It's better than the Elizabeths, better than Angelica, better than James Norrington. That's shocking how he has more variants than Will Turner. Anyway, the last 3 Jacks were all the exact same, while the Jack before that just danced instead of carrying a weapon. While the Dancing Jack lacks one ability compared to the other 3, the Cursed Jack Sparrow gains one over the other 3. This variant of Jack Sparrow, in addition to being his coolest looking variant, has that one extra ability that makes him the best Jack Sparrow in the game. What is that ability, you may ask? Look at him. Or lack of him, as he's only bones. If you've been paying attention to the series, you know what that means. It means that this Jack Sparrow is inflicted with the Aztec curse, and characters with the curse have the underwater walk ability. Sorry to draw that out for so long, but you understand, I think. Well played, TT Games, for making the character you play as the most throughout the story actually be an objectively good character. And it's not complete dog water like we see in other LEGO games. Cough complete saga. Yeah, I'm not even gonna fake the cough. Alright everyone, let's cut the crap, okay? Everything up to the top 3 was filler. Everyone who has played this game past just the campaigns already knew the top 3 since part 1. Yes, it is that easy to guess. I knew this going into the ranking. The exact order of the top 3 could be interchangeable to some, but I don't allow for ties. They can all be number 1, okay? The second best and also the first loser is Davy Jones here. Sorry my guy, I appreciate you in this game, and it was a close second place, but a second place nonetheless. Still a great character to play as, of course. This octopus man has a lot to offer. He's the leader of the Flying Dutchman crewmates, so it's only natural that he shares the abilities with them. Coral and Underwater Walk. Davy Jones has an admittedly underwhelming sword, but it does give him the sword ability. The leg stomp combat move, which we saw as Privateer Barbossa, returns here, which is an insanely OP move as far as these older LEGO games go. Also, he's swole for some reason. When he pulls those orange handles, it's gotta be all the strength in his right arm, or else I don't know how his crab claw hand could grip that metal bar. But this combo of 5 abilities is extremely nice. Strength is kind of common, but a character with strength typically can't pull them underwater because, you have to have underwater walk to be on the bottom of a body of water. But Davy Jones, along with other characters with underwater walk and strength combo, can take care of those underwater orange handles. And yes, they do occur a few times. But the other 3 abilities, aside from that combo, just makes Davy Jones rise to the top. Well, near top. Top of the fish people, at least. What can I say? TT Games are once again making the big bad the best character, which sends questionable messages to the youth, but as I've said time and time again, Blackbeard is someone I've tried to keep out of my mouth for the entire duration of the series, but sometimes it was unavoidable. On Stranger Tides, it might be the worst film that's adapted by this game, but Blackbeard being feared among all pirates throughout the 7 seas is something that they need to take into account for his abilities, and maybe the abilities that we've seen throughout the series just weren't cutting it. There's not enough abilities that would justify him literally being Pirate Satan. So, TT Games tailored an ability just for him. That's right, there is still one ability we have not seen yet in the series, and we're at number 1. Having an ability exclusive to a character already gets them hella points, and in Blackbeard's case, it took him to the very top. This ability is fittingly known as Blackbeard's Power, where you can use your sword magic
to bust open items that are black and red. And trust me, they're everywhere. I didn't do an exact count, but I'm willing to bet you will see this in every single level. It's used as a barrier to new areas a lot, and the game is telling you if you want to 100% the game, you would have to shell out 500,000 studs, which takes a while to accumulate before you get the stud multipliers that are even more expensive. Basically, Blackbeard is your gateway to collecting collectibles. If you decide to play this game for the first time, I highly suggest just spending studs on nothing until you can afford Blackbeard after you finish the story. It'll cut down on playtime a lot, which is good because the game will eventually get stale if you play it for too long. Also, the power steers away enemies while you use the magic, so they're not an issue. And finally, you can shoot power balls at targets. You can't hold down the action button to have better aim, but it still works decently enough. Honestly, Blackbeard's power could have been Blackbeard's only ability, and he would probably still be number one, just based on it being exclusive to Blackbeard and how much you need it to actually complete the game. However, Blackbeard still has more to show. The sword emitting the power can also interact with sword levers, even though I think the sword is a bit too wide to fit. Whatever, I'll allow it. It's the finale. Who cares? Blackbeard, like Davy Jones, is swole, apparently, even though I don't think he was known for his superhuman strength, but really, I think I've said my piece. Blackbeard is definitely the most essential character in this game by a long shot. He opens up the levels to entire new segments, some of them being just as big as the area you played in story mode. Blackbeard has definitely earned the title of being the best character in LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean. It's been a trip. A shorter trip compared to the other series, but an end is an end, and we're here. And like I said, I don't believe the top 3 were of any surprise to anyone who's played the game. But if you haven't, and you've reached the end of the series, what are you doing? Go play the game. It's a good one, which can't be said for them all. I'd say skip Lego Incredibles and Lego Ninjago movie game, and for sure Lego Movie 2 game, all of which I've covered on this channel, which you can check out. So I'm not afraid to cover these crappy Lego games, as I've shown. But this one I think is certified fresh. Solid 80%. Give it a go if you haven't. Now is time to do the final character count. If you skip the individual parts and are just watching the supercut, you have no idea what this is. But I made it exclusive for the individual parts so that you guys could go check those out. But you're getting the final answer here anyway, so what does it matter? I tallied the character's origin film for every part, and the film with the most representation in that part got a point. It was conveniently a tie between all the films right before the final, since there was a tie in one part. Here's the final count. And Curse of the Black Pearl wins the finale, which wins the most representation compared to the other 3 in this game. There were no stakes to this little race, so I guess we'll forget it even happened. But anyway, I want to thank you all for watching up to this point. I enjoy making these rankings, and I'm glad you'd like to see them. A one-off buffer video is planned before the next multi-part project, and I haven't decided what LEGO game will be covered next, but I know it will be a LEGO game. The fact that LEGO Pirates was so good of a game makes me want to do this again with another good one. So I'll probably spin a wheel anyway and eventually hate myself, but c'est la vie, I guess. Once again, thanks for the support. These videos are my passion projects, and I'll work on them when I can. So I guess I'll see you guys around.